o'clock, and I'll call this meeting to order. Just in the way of introductions, my name is Larry Guerin. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals.
I'm Brenda Frazier. I'm a member of the Board of Appeals.
Scott Real, vice chair.
Karen Rock, board attorney.
Leanne Champney, comprehensive planner for Community Planning and Development Department. I'm Andrea Gerhard, and I'm also from the Planning Department.
Thank you, everyone. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting, August 1st. As all the members had a chance to read the draft. Motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
We need to change something. In the heading, it says in-person meeting broadcast live, so we need to strike that since it was on March. So we can change that, the header on. That's anything.
Make that change. I'll initial it.
Yep.
Okay.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, on to the public hearings. The first case is case 2303. It's an application by Nicholas Thomas, the applicant and the property owner, requesting approval of a special exception to add a home occupations use pursuant to Article 6 R-10,000 residential zone, section 164-30D at 231 Stacy Lee Drive, Westminster. I think before you start your presentation, I think we have a couple of exhibits we want to put in. One would be your original application, and then your statement of your case. There's one exhibit A, and are we doing A or one these days?
Well, I would like to, if we could, take a look at the staff report and how the exhibits are listed here. And if we could just stick with 1, 2, 3, and 4, it might make everything easier since they're already.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we need to, we'll add those. We have new procedures here, folks, so we'll tap dance a little bit. So anyway, we have exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4 as it appears on the staff report, and you want to enter them in it.
Yeah. I would just move to accept them as exhibits in the case.
Okay, do I hear a motion to move to accept the exhibits as listed in the staff report? Motion. I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. Mr. Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Close.
No, okay. Anyway, you have an application before the board if you'd like to make your presentation.
Sure, absolutely. So that's when we go ahead and see the copies of this. I'll just read it all off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, before you start, just one point to the staff. The application, or I'm sorry, the notice that went out on the application was very uninformative. It just said a request permission to operate a home-based business, but did not, I don't think gave enough notice to the public exactly what the business was going to be, just for future cases, if you would just make sure that that information is available.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries. All right, my name is Nicholas Thomas. I'm currently applying for the zoning appeal for the purpose of applying for a federal firearms license, stands for Evansville, which be granted to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, BATFE. This license is also to be approved for the Maryland State Police, MSP, as well as the local chief of police prior to being opened. I'll be opening my business through the home located at 231 Stacy Lee Drive in Westminster, Maryland. Once up and running, my business will primarily be operated through the mail and will be centered mostly around legal online sales of firearms. I will also offer transfer services as well, which are required to be completed in person by the purchaser of said firearm, as per the rules defined by the BATFE as well as MSP. My residents will be subjected to annual inspections by both of these agencies, which will be completed by appointment notice only by them. Currently, the BATFE rules for firearms storage is a separate space with a door that closes. The area of my home that I'm going to be operating out of is a basement room with a locked door. It's currently where I keep all my personal firearms as well. I will also have a video surveillance system installed as well as further alarm. There will be no negative impact to the local foot or vehicle traffic, as I will not be operating a storefront. I will also only have a maximum of 5 firearms in inventory at all times. This will further cut down any delivery trucks coming through the area, which may have a negative impact on the local neighborhood. And furthermore, basically just kind of what I've done is kind of copy and paste the Article 164, 169, just kind of answer all the points individually. I'm currently an active duty law enforcement officer with the Frederick County Sheriff's Office. I have extensive knowledge of proper safe firearm handling as well as legalities of firearm ownership and storage. My business will primarily be through the mail and will in no way impact traffic in the neighborhood. Currently, the only people living in my residence are myself, my wife, and 3 children. Like I said before, I've dedicated a storage area, which I currently keep my personal and professional firearms in a fireproof safe, which is also secured in a separate room with a key locked door. No other people will be residing in my house, residing or working in my house at this time, as I'm the only sole employee of the LLC and the FFL. And I said a lot of the employees. My business will in no way impact the growth of the community as it will not have a storefront, and I will only accept customers by appointment only. Those points will only be surrounded over the fact of a legal firearm transfer. I'll get into a little later on. The only impact the neighborhood might see would be the equivalent of delivery services such as UPS or Amazon, which is always common to see in that particular neighborhood. My business will not require any new right of way or any commercial structure to be built. This is a home-based business which is strictly operated by me. My business will solely be operated out of the basement of my residence and in no way impact my neighbors. Per BATFE rules, my business will have a set operating hours. Since the business will be operating mostly through online sales, I'll have to set the hours in operation to be 24 hours, Monday through Saturday. However, only because of the online auction sites and shipping companies. However, keep in mind, I will not have customers arriving at my residence during odd hours of the day, during odd hours of the day, night, or holidays. I will not have any advertising signs or commercial structures built for this business, which will in no way impact property values. There will be no manufacturing of any kind, and none of the other residences will be affected by anything offensive. My residence will be the only structure used in this business, specifically a small room in the basement. My business will only need a storage area for inventory and an internet connection, which is already established. To the best of my knowledge, I know of no such rulings which would affect my business in regards to prior decisions of the courts regarding such matters. The purpose of regulation is set forth. Currently, BATFE rules require any FFL to be located no closer than 100 yards away from school. My residence is located more than 300 yards away from Westminster Elementary School, which is within the regulations of this type of business. My residence is also located more than a quarter mile away from Westminster Community Pool, which is out of sight. Please keep in mind any and all firearms coming into or leave my residence will be either discreetly boxed or properly cased. Westminster City will not be required to make any additional accommodations for my business to operate. I will not have any additional requirements to operate my business. However, DFRS and law enforcement will in no way have access to. They have limited access to my residence or surrounding residence limited. My residence does not have any cultural or historical landmarks which would be negatively impacted. My residence currently sits in the corner lot with plenty of ample parking. I will only accept customers by appointment only. and will only allow a maximum of one vehicle at a time to be parked anywhere near my residence for the purpose of conducting business. I will also have no storefront or public parking or public operating hours which would impact foot traffic or highway traffic. And as stated above, I will not be requiring any new structure to be built for the operation of my business. And questions?
Before I move on, I didn't swear any witnesses in, I have to do that.
And you go silent.
Yeah, I did it all over.
Any persons who are going to testify at this particular hearing, would you raise your hands, please? That would be you. Okay, do you swear that the testimony you just gave or are about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. I would also state that the applicant virtually just read what is marked as Exhibit 3.
Okay,
So it was, everything that he said was also already entered into the record.
okay.
And I do have one question, if you don't mind. It's at the bottom of page 3. And it says, I will not have any additional requirements to operate my business. DFRS and law enforcement will in no way have access to my residence or surrounding residences limited. I don't, will there be access or will there be limited access?
So there will be limited, there will be access, access that will not be limited. In other words, like, I'm not gonna have any locked doors that'll not permit them to enter. Or basically have any areas that are cordoned off that are deemed inappropriate for them to go to. So in other words, like in the chance that there's a fire or any law enforcement action needs to be taken, they're not gonna have their access limited anyway. So I mean, like the answer to that was more so along the lines of if I had built like a commercial structure and maybe there was a gate in the way, in which case a DFRS would need a Knox box in order to be installed. That's not gonna happen in my house.
Thank you.
Before we go, can I ask for the staff report, please?
So as Mr. Thomas has explained, it's for a special exception for home occupation, which, as you stated earlier, is pursuant to Article 6 for Art and Development Residential Code, Section 16430B. So we've already gone through the criteria for determination regarding special exception. There are also criteria for a home occupation use, which I can also go through. Just to state, obviously, the case was publicly available. We did the required notice period through section 164.166, which included newspaper advertisement, certified mail to any adjacent and neighboring properties. A sign was posted at the property, and it is also publicly available on the website. As I mentioned, there are 3 criteria for home occupation. The first, that there is no commodity sold upon the premises, which according to the applicant's pre-hearing statement and what he's previously stated, it will be online sales and then the transfer services at the property. Obviously, the staff, we do have some comments on regarding the transfer services and how that would work. You did mention that there would be a container or a spot so it wouldn't be publicly available for someone who's passed. The second is that no person is employed other than the member of the immediate family, which you've also stated that it would just be yourself. And the third is that no mechanical or electrical equipment is used except such as permissible for purely domestic or household purposes. This issue wasn't particularly addressed through the pre-hearing statement, so if you could give more detail on what I think you mentioned, that there would be IT services used and delivery type aspects. But if there's any large electrical equipment that would be used, if you could further detail, that would be great. So you went through the criteria for section 164, 169. Again, it would just be highlighting the adverse effect that it would have on the public, which you stated that there wouldn't be. Obviously, there is also the facilities to be used by the city, and any requirement for home occupation would require a water and sewer application, which states the water usage that you would require for your business. There are also conditions for granting of special exceptions under section 164, 161A and section 164, 170A. Which there are 3 points to that. The first being that the proposed use does not adversely affect the general plan. The applicant hasn't issued how it would affect the master plan. However, there is no detailed reference to home occupation in the city comprehensive plan. The second, that the proposed use at the selected location will not adversely affect the health and safety of residents and workers in the area. And again, this is bringing the issue of transfer of services. The second point being an overburden of existing public services. And as I previously mentioned, we would require a water sewer allocation application for that. And C, that it would not be a detrimental use or development of adjacent properties. This mainly sort of concerns the parking element and the number of customers that you have coming to your property and where exactly they would park. So finally, in terms of the standards set forth for this particular use, there are some outstanding issues regarding the proposed no firearm sale on site. As you said, it was primarily through online, so just clarifying that point. Obviously, the obtaining of a water sewer application, the parking space requirements, obtaining any necessary federal, state, and local licenses, and then to obtain any city or county permits for building. And we also suggest the number of customers limited to 2 per day, and the hours of operation being 9 till 3, Monday to Friday, subject to providing on-site parking. Obviously, the board is then subject to approving with conditions or not, disapproving the applicant's request. So that's the zone that it's in. I did speak to a number of neighbours who called following seeing either the public notice that was at the property or via the certified mail, requesting further information regarding the hearing tonight. And I think someone's actually contacted following a telephone conversation regarding this application. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Thomas, I have a few questions. Just kind of in the way of background, so I understand your background. You say you're sheriff, the sheriff's department of the city of Frederick or county?
With the Frederick County.
Frederick County. So, and how long have you been with Frederick County?
10 years.
10 years. What's your are you a captain? Are you a, what's your rank?
I'm a deputy first class.
Deputy. Okay, thank you. Have you looked at other, sheriffs or police departments before that?
No, I was a volunteer firefighter prior to that, with Anne Arundel County, but, no, my primary job was with the Frederick County Sheriff's Office.
What you apply for, to a permanent license, with the, was it VAFTE, is that?
So not yet, so the first step in order to be able to apply for that license to begin with is to get approval from the zoning board, so that I can even operate in my house. So that as of right now, I don't have the LLC set up, I don't have the tax, the tax ID number set up. I have not sent in any application to the ATF because if it came back that you guys said that I wouldn't be approved to be operating out of my house, I'm not gonna operate a storefront. With my schedule and my kids, I don't have the ability to do that. So this is really the first step in that process.
Walk me through what you, conceive your business is going to be.
So currently, it's really just gonna be like extremely small. Primarily, as I said, with online sales. There's
When you say online sales, how, would you be like a representative of particular manufacturers, or would you be kind of, your own independent buyer of the guns and then sell them back, to your customers?
pretty much in the middle. So there's two main websites I'm going to be operating through. One is called gunbroker.com. The other one is called Arms List. Gunbroker, for lack of comparison, is kind of like eBay for firearms. It's an online auction site. So what would happen was, if I end up getting certified for the ATF to be an FFL, I would go on to a distributor such as Libby's or Saxon's, pick up the firearm that I want to sell, buy it from them. They would ship it to me certified. I would be there to pick it up, and I would then take it in inventory, and then from there I would then put it up online through those websites.
So you would, most of your business would be buying the item and then reaching out and selling, as opposed to a request from a customer, I want such and such, and you would get it for them and sell it to them.
That's right. The other part of the transfers that I kind of spoke of was, let's say someone bought a gun off Gunbroker and they happen to live in Westminster City. And the firearm dealer they're buying it from lives in Indiana. So it's not really feasible for them to drive all the way to Indiana to go pick it up. So they would have their firearms dealer then ship that gun down to me. I would then take possession of it, put it in my inventory, contact the customer, and then kind of set forth a time for them to actually come down. And as I said before, you suggested the operating action is 9 to 3. I don't see that being an issue. And then from there, they would schedule the time to come down, and I'd meet with them. I'll do the background check. They have to fill out something called a 77R form, which is the background check form for the ATF. We'd have to run through the Nexus system, which is the criminal background check system. And then from there, the ATF then gives approval for them to own the gun, or they don't give approval. If they do give approval, they pay me for the transfer because that's basically a service that I offer. If it comes back that they are not approved, they're not leaving the house with the gun, obviously. So then that firearm then gets shipped back to the center. And that's it.
What type of guns would you be licensed to, to sell at your house?
Initially, it would just be long guns, rifles and shotguns. There's also second approval for pistols that has to get approved through the state police.
But can you be, if you're just basically saying for a layman, a rifle and pistol, are there any other types of weapons you would be permitted to sell?
You mean like short barrel rifles or automatic weapons or anything like that?
Yeah.
No, that's that's a separate tax stamp called a SOP, no, excuse me, the SOT tax. That later on I would have the ability to add on to it, but I'm not gonna do that. The reason I can do is because of the margin of profit on those type of items, it's not feasible for me to do it. And you really can't, in my personal opinion, you really shouldn't operate that out of a home-based FFL. Just because.
What kind, speaking of being profitable, how many to be a profitable business for you? I mean, how many weapons per week, per month, or whatever do you see have to turn over, to basically make it viable as a business for you?
So the profit margin on a firearm, as long as the distributors aren't really running deals, is typically between 5 to 10%. That's assuming that you sell the firearm for MSRP price. I would be doing my best to undercut that. So in reality, I'm probably making $30 to $40 per firearm that I sell. So if that were the case, probably in order to be able to break even after the initial cost of the business licensing and the items that I would need in order to actually start up, probably in the market of probably 200 to 300 firearms per year. And then after that, it really doesn't cost. It doesn't cost hardly anything, because the only extra item that I need would be a computer with an internet internet connection, which I already have. It's only just a website that you go to, and that's just storage for the 77 R4s, which file cabinet, which I already have. So,
Walk me through just the process, the actual business. Like, how do you see your deliveries? You say you go online, the equivalent of eBay or some other site. Tell me how these deliveries work coming to your house.
So with firearms, obviously they're highly controlled. So it would be sent to be certified. So I would have to be present there and be able to sign for it whenever UPS or FedEx showed up with an order to sign it. I haven't researched it too much, but I believe what I can do is whenever I get an alert that I'm gonna have a certified package sent to me, I can have that package kept at the distribution center for UPS or FedEx, which would be more ideal for me. Just because with my work schedule and whatnot, it would be better just to go there myself, pick it up. I believe that's going to be an option for me. If it isn't, then they can just show up at the designated time. And I'll be there, just sign for it, and then take possession of it.
Okay, once you take possession of it, you say you have storage. Is it a locker or is it a room? Or
it's a room with a lock door.
okay, and in that room, how are you going to store the weapons?
On the shelf.
Okay, so they wouldn't be locked. They wouldn't be locked into a separate cabinet.
As of right now, no.
What kind of security system do you foresee?
So we're going to be getting a Brinks security system, which is going to be monitored.
So this would be your home security system.
That's right.
Okay.
And then we're also looking into getting surveillance cameras as well.
Okay. How about on the what kind of security, like alarms and within your house? What are you foreseeing you would have to provide to keep the firearms safe?
Just have security systems on me.
What about outside? How about, you said you're going to get, do you expect to have any special lighting outside?
No.
Okay. You said, how about cameras?
The camera's going to be they're infrared cameras. So they're going to have night vision capabilities.
And what kind of surveillance do you foresee having on in and outside your premises, other than what you said?
That's basically it.
So what happens, what do you foresee, if somebody tries to break into your house? What, what are you, what procedures would you have in place to, to stop that from happening? Or basically stop somebody from getting the weapons?
Well, it depends if I'm home or not. Obviously, if I'm home, like I said, I'm a certified law enforcement officer, and you're breaking into my home, I have the right to kill you. I can justify that. My patrol car is out front. It's pretty obvious that a police officer lives in my house, and I'm sorry for your luck, but you're dead, for lack of better words. If I'm not home, like I said, the alarm system is going to be activated. It's going to be activated, and it's under as long as it's activated, it's under 24-hour surveillance. So in that case, Westminster City Police would be showing up to my house.
So again, just so I understand, you're not a representative of any corporation or an employee. You're actually a freelancer.
Yes, sir.
In terms of getting commodity, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I have a couple questions, I guess, that relate to the staff report. See if I can take a second. The staff report quotes section 164-30D, home occupations. But it says it's provided that there's no commodity sold upon the premises. And I'm trying to figure out in my own mind, the city code is pretty limited in terms of what the definitions are for various procedures and premises, the type of zoning and that kind of stuff is fairly limited. So I tried to do some homework on this and figure out, have a better idea of, I guess, what we're talking about. So I went actually, I went to everybody usually has a regular dictionary at home or every the classrooms and libraries and stuff. Well, there's also specialized dictionaries, and one is called Black's Law Dictionary. So probably every lawyer, every law firm, every courthouse has a Black's Law Dictionary, and that's where lawyers have an idea of where to go to start figuring out what particular word and phrase may be. And so I happen to have one, and so I went in and looking, I think it was no commodity sold upon premises. So I looked up the word sell, and it says the definition in Black's Law Dictionary is dispose of by sale to transfer title or possession of property to another in exchange for valuable consideration. And interestingly, it actually quotes that language is quoted from a Maryland case. So practically every lawyer in the United States are going to look at a Maryland case, and that's the definition that they would have for selling an item. And then I figured, okay, what does commodity mean? And again, I went back to Black's Law Dictionary. It said commodities, those things which are useful or serviceable, particularly articles of merchandise movable in trade, goods, wares, and merchandise of any kind, articles of trade or commerce, movable articles of value, things that are bought and sold. This word is a broader term than merchandise, and referring to commerce may include almost any article of movable or personal property. And when I put those two together, I've got to say, and I'm only going to speak for myself. I don't know if I'm colleagues here, but to me, that means selling this particular commodity that you want to sell would be prohibited under, under section 164.30D of the city code. And you mentioned customers quite a bit in your comments, so I looked up customers. And a customer is one who regularly or repeatedly makes purchases or has business dealings with a tradesman or business, ordinarily one who has had repeated business dealings with another, a buyer, purchaser, consumer, or patron. So I'm looking at this particular section that was quoted in the staff report, and I'm having a hard time justifying as a home occupation this, if you will, sale of commodities. And for example, take I'm going to say take if you wanted to sell Tupperware in your house, okay, you would go online, you would get a distributor, they would send the tubs and the lids and everything to you. You would, and maybe you'd have a Tupperware party, I don't know, and the people would come, they would give you money, and they would take the Tupperware. Well, under my reading of this particular section, you couldn't sell Tupperware in your house. So, and that's one concern I have. The other is that provided no mechanical or electrical equipment is used except as is permissible for purely domestic or household purposes. Now, one of the things I did want to point out, I guess, maybe to the fellow members here and to you, and here it is. There's a section in the city code for firearms sales in the downtown business zone. It is section 164-155-3. And it has specific requirements and restrictions on the sale of firearms within the downtown business zone. Have you had a chance to look at that at all? Have you done any research?
I did look at it. I did look it over. I didn't see how it applied. Maybe because I'm not in the downtown zone.
Well, the thing of it is, if I, as a board, we can make restrictions and conditions on any special exception that we give. And I certainly would make those restrictions a part of the conditions of any special exception that we would give, not just you, but anybody who's going to want to sell firearms in any district or any type of, it's just home or downtown or wherever. I don't see that there's a difference there in terms of the need for safety for obvious reasons. So that being the case, if you care to, I have extra copy I can give you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks. But here it requires a loading and unloading station provided within the facility when firearms are to be sold. Again, relying on my opinion that what you are asking for is to the ability to sell a commodity out of your home. This, I find I can't see how you will be able to meet that restriction. Your security system has to be externally monitored. I don't know. Do you understand what that means? Do you have to have like a separate like ADT type security system on your house?
Yeah, so like I said before, we're looking at getting into Brinks. And
Okay.
like I said, the Brinks is when it's activated, it's monitored 24/7.
Okay.
So I mean that would be the externally monitored.
Yeah.
So
And it also, I won't go through all of them, it also says firearms sales facility shall provide break resistant doors, gates, glass, security grills, and gates. Now, I know what you're going to say is, well, you don't need the gates and whatever because you have them in a security facility in your basement. But these particular restrictions or conditions are a lot more secure than what you're telling us, which would just be a locked door with guns on shelf in your basement. And that's somebody who's, basically doing the same, and again, I'm speaking for myself, is doing the same type of commerce, which is selling a commodity. So between, having a commodity sold at the home and having a security system that's beyond the purely domestic or household purposes, I personally, I know there's conditions and other restrictions that that maybe we'll be going through in terms of special exceptions or certain criteria that we look at as a board, as if we're going to give an special exception. How does it affect the neighborhood? Are there other schools nearby? Are there churches and other facilities nearby that it might be affected? Our property values going to be affected by that. I don't get to that point in my analysis here. I just think that section 164-30D would prevent you from selling Tupperware at your house and any other type of commerce directly out of your home. So that's my feeling on it. I'll shut up now, I guess, for a minute, and maybe some other people have some questions. But
Actually, if I may, I'd like to answer a couple of those things. So, in regards to your statement about selling, the online sales is literally selling a commodity. Just like what you said, I'm buying from distributors, I'm doing my own personal markup, putting it back on the market, and then shipping it out by a certified seller. By a certified shipper to a certified FFL. In regards to the transfers, which I believe would be my primary income, just because it's, for lack of better words, we're in America. Everybody wants to buy a gun. So, and they need to have somebody who actually does transfer services. That firearm that's already sent to me is already purchased. So I'm not actually selling them the item. I'm only taking money for my personal services to be able to give them.
that's a standard that's for BATFE, but you're playing a different sandbox here. You have certain hoops you have to go through to get your license to sell. You have certain hoops you have to go through to get a special exception, and call, when it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And from my perspective, you're not just doing transfer service there. You're actually selling the guns. You are the one that's going to the distributor, ordering it for your customer, who then comes, gives you money, and takes it home or wherever. So that to me meets any definition that I have seen of selling an item, of having commerce, commodities sold at your house. I know we obviously disagree on that, but
We disagree, it's okay.
yeah. And you had some.
Yeah, but in regards to the special purposes for the downtown business zone, you mentioned the one, a loading station. This is actually my personal, the only guns that are coming to my house that are loaded and leave loaded are the ones I use for work.
Will you have a license to sell ammunition?
No, so I'm not manufacturing firearms. I'm not manufacturing ammunition. I'm not buying and selling ammunition. And every gun that I'm potentially selling will not be sold with ammunition. That's just how I'm gonna run my business.
Okay.
But yeah, no. And then, I mean, provided breakers, doors, gates, glass, security grills. I mean, okay, I can definitely say how I'd be in violation of that. But I mean, you also need to take consideration in order to get into the place where I'm gonna be storing the firearms, you need to get through my front door, which is dead bolted with a high security lock already. You need to know where the firearms are, so they need to go down into my basement. And they go through a second locked door, which also has dead bolt on it. And the door that they need to break through, it's not a standard door, it's a fire door. So it's already a steel encased door, so that's already a separate level of security right there. The easier way would maybe to go through the drywall. But I mean, to be honest with you, locks for honest people. And if anyone truly wants to get into anyone's house, they're gonna do it. And that goes for my home base business at the Bell, all the way out to the gun shop on the corner. If someone wants to get in there, they're going to get in there. It's really up to the point of the police response.
But the gun shop, which obviously is a store, like a better way. I mean, they have much more security than, a drywall to try and get through to your gun room. And they have a lot more guns, but still a gun is a gun is a gun. What I'm looking at, I'm looking basically at what the code says, not about guns or Tupperware or anything else. It's a commodity that's sold upon the premises. And it doesn't matter. I don't care, what it is. If you, wanted to sell Cupid dolls or something out of your house, that would be the same type of situation. I personally would have to vote against it.
Can I ask a question of everyone while you're talking about that? And maybe it's to the attorney or the city. If that is in here in guns, Tupperware, whatever, if it was truly a no sale, no anything, knitted caps, whatever, how could that come to us as an exception if that was just is what it is, nothing is sold out of homes? That's why it's actually just a question I don't understand. So we would make the exception that a commodity could be sold out of our home.
That you cannot do.
Well, that's what I'm
That's what I-
questioning. I don't know if it's coming to us for approval. There's something that's not making sense to me, and maybe it's just.
I guess I
Does
would,
anybody understand my
I
question?
would defer to staff on that. However,
Right.
once an application is received, then it's up to ultimately the board to make sure that it meets the requirements of the code. So the very first thing is when you look under the zoning and it says home occupations are permitted by special exception under, our standard criteria for approval, right?
Right,
But then when you go back to the definition of home occupation, which is what I think the chair is saying, that's when you get into an analysis. Okay, is the use proposed actually fall within the definition of home occupation, so it has to be permitted as a special exception in the zone. Now you can, as to staff's analysis, when an application is received and their analysis, I'd have to defer to them.
I guess, I don't know if I'm answering.
Have I answered your-
I guess it's like if it's a no-go, regardless of what it is, how is it even getting to the board for approval? Or if it's not a no-go and we can, and I guess that's my question.
I think a lot of the discussion regarding the first point is that there's no commodity sold upon the premises, and the fact that the sale was primarily online, then it's the transfer services, that's where it becomes a point of discussion.
See, that's where I disagree. He's using, I will suggest there's a sale made from the gun company to him. And he is the middleman of the sale. It's not just a transfer of services or, whatever the phrase is. It's a resale. It's sold to him. He resells it at a 10 to 20% profit, whatever it is. He needs he got 200 guns a year to make it profitable for him. So it's not just a transfer of resources or whatever, what's it called? Transport.
Services.
Transport. It's not just services. It's his business. It's where he makes his money. He makes 10 to 20% off of the sales. He needs to make 200 sales a year. So it's not just, transport service. It's not services. It's actual commodity that he's providing to his customer. And it's not just to the public or whatever. It's customers that have either sought him out or he sought out, whatever the, whatever the business plan is. So I'm just speaking for myself, but I see that is a sale of commodity on premises. And my feeling is we don't even get to the conditions that we would put on a special exception, because I don't think a special exception, that it falls within the approval of the special exception. That's my opinion.
I also, I'm sorry if I may, I also want to bring, just for you to think about for a second, the fact that the time in which our code was written, there wasn't anything of online sales. So it's a different way of thinking of how maybe the code was supposed to be interpreted at the time in which it was written. It's obviously different now. But just want to bring that point up, because maybe when the code was written, sales of commodity didn't include a website. So there are a lot of people who do lots of sales via website. I do think though that regardless of how the website sales is one thing and the transfer of service is another. If you could get through maybe the website service or the sales of the website, you still have the fact of the transfer service. So even though, it wasn't intended like that, there's still some sort of sales going on. I just wanted to bring to light, that it might not make sense in the mind that we're thinking of right now for commodities and sales, but it could have meant something a little bit different. Not, yeah, so, but I'm just.
It's still a Dutch.
But one of the most common cases that I've seen over the years, one share beauty salons and houses and things like that. There is both a service happening with the cutting of hair or nails or what have you, and you have also sales. I mean, they're gonna sell product and they're gonna sell shampoo or conditioner or what have you, and they're gonna have Redken or Revlon or whatever there at the portion. So it happens. It's out there and it's pretty common.
I'm sorry, you can.
No,
You done?
Yeah, I'm taking too much of it.
It's time to go to bed. No,
Not yet.
2 questions. So I go and purchase my gun and I give my drop down of where places I can go to have it shipped and pick it up. Your name will, after this, your business would be included in that? Is that part of that's the main piece of it? Okay.
Sure.
I understood that transfer, so I do know that process. And you had said on here, the other thing was 5. Is that a role based off of I know you said it would be 5 firearms inventory at a time. Is that stipulation of that you're making, or that one of the organizations that you have to get licensed through makes?
That's stipulation that I personally make.
That you're making? Oh,
The thing, I just gotta give number 5 is because, I don't want my entire storage unit to be full of guns that I'm waiting to sell, just because, yeah, they might sell fast. But I still need to buy them first, and I don't want to sit on for too long.
sure.
So it would just be more feasible for me to have a very small inventory and then just go as I sell.
Go ahead, Scott.
I only have one question for you. Long time ago, my ex-wife started an in-home daycare business, and I had nothing to do with the business, but as an adult in the household, I had to be fingerprinted, background checked, all that kind of stuff. To the Fed and state agencies that, since this is a kind of a interesting use, are they requiring your spouse to also have a background check and so forth?
No, so the only person who just fingerprints me, because my name is the only one that's gonna go on the list itself. They will know who's living in my house. They'll also get a list of any employees I have, which as I said, I'm not gonna have employees, it's gonna be. But
There's no requirements of any other adult.
that's it.
I guess my point, my additional point would be is if the board members feel there's a, there's they have the option to give a special exception, I think, the board needs to go through the criteria for for determination and, the conditions to fill the exception. I don't get to that point from my point of view.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I was wondering if you were gonna see if there was anybody else who wanted to testify before you move into that
I
discussion.
wasn't getting quite there yet, but yes, is there anybody else here who wants to testify?
Thank you.
So anyway, I'm done for now. I'm intentional.
So, okay, so what you could do is you could have a discussion on the threshold issue, whether or not this is a home occupation for which you could grant a special exception. If you decide that it is not, then that disposes of the case. If you decide that it is, then you will have to go through all the criteria for granting the special exception and say how it complies with that.
I would also, at this point, maybe, ask if there are any other testimony or comments from the applicant or anybody else, and then if not, to close the, testimony, go into
The resolution.
the deliberation.
But really just that, this is not gonna be my primary occupation, this is really just something I'm gonna be doing on the side. So I mean, I can really be as active or as inactive as I choose for the entire business. Because as I said, my primary job is deputy sheriff of Perry County. That's where I make all my money that I get paid taxes.
Motion to close testimony. So move. All in favor? Aye. Okay, now we'll go into deliberations of the board. I'd like to hear from other board members I've been talking.
My concern with it is the location. Given that planning development. It might not be the perfect place.
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder because they're having a hard
I
time?
don't know, That's my background.
Yes.
I had some concerns about this, simply because of the location. For the case. Again, it's planning development. It's not that dense residential area. However, that being said, also an issue with firearm sales per se. I'm just not sure it's the location.
And I would say I don't have an issue with the sale of firearms per se, but I think in terms of maybe it's being a lawyer or whatever. Now that would be feeling too much, but a retired lawyer. But I just think in interpreting the code, I have to come down, that it certainly is not an appropriate place for this type of business. I have to interpret the city code in a fairly strict basis, and that's why I come down with not even granting any special exception with or without conditions. So that's where I'm.
That statement bothers me as well, but I'm not sure that we would be having the conversation if he was selling Tupperware. I'm not sure we would be I don't know, maybe we would be, because it is what it is, it's a commodity, so,
I don't have an issue with the sale.
Right, I don't either, I have an issue with the way that if we can't approve it, then that's when and it came to us and we're not allowed to approve it as an exception, but I don't think that, like you said, they're selling shampoo out of salons that are in the house, so I think that it's a whole nother conversation to think about changing. Go ahead.
Well, and then I have to say, are the examples you're giving, are they in the city? Are they actually home occupations that have been permitted and approved? I mean, so I understand what you're saying for purposes of the record, but I think it's hard to rely on that statement unless we're gonna make sure that they are home occupations in the city that we're talking about. Does that make sense?
I'm not, I mean, the location isn't ideal, but the fact that it is. It's beyond the approved amount for the BATFE. That they only require 100 yards and we're 300, so I feel like they have. Given their regulations as for that, I don't think it's ideal, but it definitely is falling into those, so.
Is there any other discussion? If there's going to be a motion to, in any way to consider the granting of a special exception, we still need to go through the, the criteria and the criteria and condition. Since I think it's not an appropriate, special exception with or without conditions, I'm not the person to make any motion. So.
Well, and as we talked about trying to put some process to what you're going through, what you could look at is the definition of home occupation and have a conversation. So it's any occupation or profession carried on by a member of the immediate family residing on the premises, provided that there is no commodity sold upon the premises, no person is employed other than a member of the immediate family, and no mechanical or electrical equipment. So you could go through that to say whether or not it's an appropriate it is appropriate under home occupation. If it meets that criteria, then you would move on to the special exception analysis.
Right. And I'm just saying, I don't think it meets those criteria.
So would it meet that criteria in your mind if in fact it was purely transfer of? Because you cannot have a firearm brought to your house. If you buy a firearm, you can't it has to go to a licensed place, and then that's no longer a sale. That is purely, I'm going to his house to pick up the commodity. He's not selling it to me. I'm paying the fee for that.
My analysis of that particular section is that it is a sale of a commodity. That's how I interpret it. And such, yes.
I hate to be participating in this more than perhaps I should, but I would like to clarify with the applicant, because I do believe he said he would be purchasing guns and have them in inventory that he would then put out there to sell. So
He's doing both.
Yeah, so he's selling a product on his premises that he has bought and now is transferring for profit to another person. And to me, I mean, you may have two sales. You may have a sale from the gun, from the firearm maker to him, and then from him to the customer. There may be two sales there, but there's still sales. It's not, he's not just, doing a transfer there. So again, I'm probably in the minority here, but and again, even if it's shampoo, first of all, I doubt that many salon owners have come in for a special exception for salon. I think they just do it and that's fine, and nobody says anything, to be honest with you.
Leanne, was there a negative comments or feedback from residents in the area that have been contacted or had contacted you?
It was more a question of what the application was for and then how they could participate in the hearing session. It wasn't a case of negativity. It was more a questioning of how was this business going to be run.
But they were aware of the use.
Yes, so the advertisement did state home occupation, along with the telephone number and contact details to call me, which they did. And then I provided them with greater detail on what the application was for following the pre-hearing statement that we then received. I stated that obviously you can come to City Hall and attendance, and if you have any questions, or you can watch it live on YouTube, which we're currently doing at the moment. So that was the main thing. There wasn't really any sort of great detail on what their major concern was. It was more of a concern of what exactly was this application.
So if your neighbors didn't have much concern with you,
No, I mean,
maybe I shouldn't you?
no, if I'm being honest, I spoke to 3 of my neighbors so far. One of which is all exciting is he wants to use me as his primary, and that's the old transfer guy. But I mean, as far as I know, I've been extremely transparent with anyone that's ever come up to me and asked me, it was that signed for, and just tell them exactly what I'm planning on doing. For what I've gotten, anyone spoken to me about it, has done anything negative to say to me.
So, I mean, Scott, I think my only thing is following that I don't know if we can put a stipulation. I'm kind of asking you too, is if we did, again, I disagree with Larry that knowing the process where you have to have a place to go pick up a firearm that you purchase, at least a pistol or not necessarily a long arm, you know, if you're that place where they have to go pick it up, that's one thing. I'm not sure how whether I would want to or not, how we would approve with the stipulation of no commodity, because that is, you are having 5 firearms there that anybody can come look at, sell, try out, whatever. I mean, obviously not try out at your house, but that makes it not possible according to the regulations. But the transfer, I think, is very appropriate. I don't know if that's even a possibility for you just to do one and not the other.
I mean, you're talking about stipulations of,
Not having an inventory where you're selling, where you're basically the transfer agent,
yeah, so no online sales in my case.
where you would ship.
Obviously, so like I said, I'm not operating a storefront. It's not like I'm gonna have a website that says, hey, I've got these in inventory right now. Just come on over and handle them, play with them, do what you want to do, want to buy it. That's not what I'm planning on doing. Really, the main number 5 that I would be keeping the inventory would be for online sales only. And then the transfers would be, hey, I just bought this gun off the arms list. I'm having shipped to you.
Got you. I will let you go through this because I screwed up every time. Do you want to put the motion out?
Do we, if we're putting a motion up to, you know, with conditions, presumably, and I'll ask council here, do we need to go through the criteria and the conditions and as part of the record?
Yes, so if the board concludes that this application as proposed meets the definition of home occupation in the city code, and then it would go to, does it meet the criteria for approval as a special exception? You'd have to go through each of the criteria. Because if you look at, you can't say necessarily as set forth in the staff report, because some of it says you need to get more information from the applicant, which the applicant did provide. So you would have to articulate how it meets those criteria.
One of you need this. She's saying that you have, you have to. Start sharing.
I guess I would say you could keep in mind as you go through what staff's recommended conditions are as well. Which is, provided no firearms or other commodities related to the proposed home occupation shall be sold on site. So I'm not sure.
I think the stipulation there was online, yeah, so.
How do you do an online sale when 5 of them are sitting in his basement?
What do you mean? Somebody buys them and
Somebody-
ships them to them.
He's saying his proposal is that he hasn't shipped it to his house. Maybe they have a direct, maybe he's just a conduit. But his proposal, his testimony is that he'll have 5 firearms. He doesn't know whether we'll have a customer for those firearms, but they can come and they can choose from those firearms and take them home. After you're shaking your head.
He didn't say that they would shoot them.
No, I didn't say, no, but they would come, choose them, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
For the record, it's choose them. And I just, it's not what you're saying there is not the testimony we have before the court.
I thought I heard him say that he would be selling them online to his clients.
His testimony was he will get them online, ship them to him, have no more than 5 in his home. He will then either, he has then putting advertisements out, his clientele, his customers will come and pick up the guns, pay him for them, and then take them away. So it's not online, he's not just a conduit, he's storing them, he's buying them prior to having a customer for those particular guns.
Correct.
And to me, that is a customer sale, inventory sale, commodity sale on its premises, it's not just a tax. And that's where I disagree. I understand if it were just a transfer through, it's not a duck. But, I'm gonna shut, I'm repeating myself. Yeah.
And pursuant to section 164-169, which deals with occupation. What they heard, enemy traffic conditions, the effects of such use on the conjunct of people, their homes, conservation of property values. This case meets that criteria. With regard to section 154-70. Vision frame, discussion. The use or location selected or not adversely affect the health and safety of persons working in the area. Overburden existing public services or the detriment use development of adjacent properties. John, I agree. I guess given the distance from school, community pool. Other descriptions.
Should we add the conditions of getting approval from the appropriate organizations that you would need?
Yes, that's a given. Yes.
Yeah.
Without that, it doesn't.
Correct.
So,
And the water and sewer.
yes, that it meets the city's requirements for water and sewer service, as well as receives all the applicable federal and state approvals.
My only hesitation with that, Scott, is I don't feel like there's a way for him to put another parking spot there but there's off street, so we have
There's
to.
ample one-street parking.
Right, so I don't know how we need to word that, because I don't see a way that he can add another spot there.
That's also right.
I don't know really that we would consider the street parking sufficient for the,
Or that the customer is required to, I guess, have their vehicle on premises
yeah, and yeah, we could do that.
rather than transacting. And the third space requirement, basically say that customers can be on premises. Vehicle.
The suggested conditions that the customers be limited to 2 per day and the hours be limited to 9 to 3, is that part of your motion or?
Yes, I mentioned the 9 to 3. As far as the online activity, setting the time and all that, I don't think that's necessary or limited to the customer.
Even sitting too long.
I know. Yeah, Karen, can we do it right? Did Scott do it right?
So I guess when I'm looking at the criteria, we're looking at 164, 169, right? And you have addressed those factors that you consider to be relevant under 164, 169B. And you have made a determination that it would not adversely affect the public health, safety, security, morals, and general welfare and dangerous traffic conditions. It's one thing to make that statement, but I would put a little bit more to it if you could as to why why it or how it complies with that, if that makes any sense. And then you have 164, 170, which I think you addressed the conditions about not overburdening or adversely impacting the health and safety. And just to clarify, you at the beginning, I think you said you do find it is a home occupation under that definition.
Yes.
Okay.
Did we the other thing, sorry, Scott, about the requirement to have an outside connected security system? Add that into the
Meaning
requirements,
them off-site.
right, like Westminster City would be with.
We would add that to the other restrictions, requirement of an AET like or.
You were saying,
it's, you know, it's like very much.
And no more than 5 firearms at one time. You've added some.
That came from your original
Yeah.
report.
That's right.
More than 5 firearms. Per sale.
Motion. Second motion.
Sorry.
So you've moved to approve for those reasons.
Yes.
So it needs a second.
I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. No, whatever. I would also request, staff or also, if I'm a negative vote, I think the draft, board of go to vice chair.
Okay.
Moving on.
Ready? Applicants know what the process is after getting approval.
So following the approval, council and the board will put together a decision based on what you've heard tonight, which will include conditions as set out as you just heard. And we will then send you a copy by email, which you then I think can appeal within 30 days.
Doesn't sound like it's appealing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if you would have want to appeal with any condition.
I submitted the reason for the conditions. But, do I have to say the whole meeting or?
You can go.
Okay, great, yeah.
Great.
Thank
You wanna do that
much.
again?
To Scott. Much needed. Thank you.
Okay. Now, just to everybody, does anybody need a break before we have a 5-minute break, or shall we go ahead? I'm ready to go ahead. Let's move on. All right. Next item is case number 23-04, an application by Tim Kyle, the applicant and property owner, requesting approval of a special exception for the conversion dwellings subject to the requirements of section 164-50 and the county health department use pursuant to article 7 R-7500 section 164-36B at 160 West Main Street. Can I, anybody who's going to testify, would you raise your hand? I'll get you in before you start testifying. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes. Yeah, what I propose to do by 160 West Main Street is from a single family to a 2-family residence. Each unit will be an upscale 2-bedroom apartment, approximately 1,200 feet each. The size of the lot is a 10,073 square foot house, separate detached shop building and carriage house. The house and all the outbuildings will be restored to the original conditions with no structural change. Plan is for off-street parking to provide like 4 parked cars in the back. The interior of the house will be restored. Most of the rooms remain as we original plan. The upgrading new electrical plumbing and sprinkler as per code. And so I just thank you and
in advance for this request. This property on 160 West Main Street has probably been vacant for at least 10 years, maybe longer. And it is going into pretty much disrepair. They had people who I purchased it from had bought the property, came in and they started the project. And there was death in the family of the contractor and he left. But in the meantime, he tore all the plaster out of the inside of the house. I sent pictures, I don't know if you got them, and they basically stripped the inside, put the plaster outside on the yard. There, so that's what that's where it started from.
For the record, you're Mr. Powell.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And you don't own it yet, right?
Yes.
Oh, you already purchased it, okay.
I bought this. So, one of the reasons I bought this and I think that kind of my reputation is in West Main Street. I've taken a lot of properties up there. It's a lot of the disrepair properties to fix them up. And this is one of the last ones up there. It's a great old house. It's the old shoemaker house. I knew the granddaughter, Rosemary McCloskey, who used to be registered will, was part of the election board. I knew her. And then that have gone down to the point of it starting to fall down on, and if we don't seem to do something, we're gonna lose that structure. Especially in the back, the carriage house now has completely, you saw some pictures there that compared carriage house, the roof is falling off of it. I want to restore the carriage house back to the original section. Everything in the house itself will be all brand new as far as, except for the framing. The front foyer is going to stay the same. All the exterior is going to stay the same. I'm going to create the 4 parking spots in the back. I'm going to plan to bring the parking spot in through around the other side of the carriage house, which over is 164, which is my property also, because I don't want to bring the driveway in on the other side between the carriage house and the property next door, because there is a walnut tree there as a specimen. This thing is probably one of the largest walnut trees you'll see in town.
Is that on a property?
It's on my house.
That's on your.
And I don't want to disturb it. So I plan to bring a site drawing, which will be done by a licensed surveyor, to bring the line in and to put the parking spots in the back. In the back, I'm going to make like a little area, a garden area for my tenants. And so and then fix the tenant, the barn or the old carriage house up, maybe use it for storage. And then there's an old shop in there I would like to use because I have some rentals in that area that I use for a shop. I think that if you would grant this, this would help not affect the public welfare at all in that area. It wouldn't create any dangerous conditions, but upgrading, repairing, and renovating this will actually bring more stability to that part of West Main Street from Maryland Avenue up to Union Street. So I think I've met all the other criteria of the zoning law as far as having 5,000 square feet that I need per unit, so 10,073. The housing in the houses on that, there's 13 houses on that block. 9 of them are already multiple family units are being used as rentals. I don't think the only difference is, which I know that I'm gonna have to, if granted, I'm gonna have to apply for water allotment for the additional apartment. I don't see any trouble with any of the pedestrians because all that infrastructure's there. So I just think that I would like to get this property back and running. So that was one of the last houses on the block that has been vacant.
Other testimony? Yes.
Linda McNulty, I actually live up the hill, I live at 195 West Main Street. I also own 191, 185, 183, 181, 159. And my property is already stored. Tim's done a great job, he owns a house next to 159. And I asked him if he'd give you the extra expense to put a pretty railing around it, kind of the saloon flat porch, the railing that ripped off. He spent the extra money to put the extra railing on, which you didn't have to do. Spent a lot of money on the property. All his tenants, he gets good tenants, we don't have any trouble. And call and ask him something, calls me right back. And the house he bought, I do not remember anybody living in it. And I lived there many. My grandfather built my house. So I think this is a good thing to do with that property.
I'm Pam Goodman, and I actually, my husband and I own the house next door. It has been vacant for a long time. And the first time it went for sale was, I think we weren't moved in there very long. So it might have been late 2017 or early 2018. And so I looked at it then and saw the extensive damage because my son and daughter-in-law live in Florida. And I thought, wow, this would be great. You know, this is a historic home, it's really, really cheap. But then I looked inside and I talked to him, it's like, no way, and we couldn't afford to do that. Plus, my daughter-in-law's mother had just moved to Florida, so that's probably not gonna happen. But anyway, so at that point, it did get bought, and so we waited to see, you know, if they would do some improvements, and they did paint the outside. But when I first moved there were drug deals going on in the backyard, which I just happened to notice. I know before we moved in, it was being rented, but the front rooms were all full of Mrs. Finch, who was the former owner. It was all full of her antiques and things there. So there was really nobody looking at those front windows. It was kind of just dark up there, maybe. I don't know, but that's why they like just parked their house, walked across their front yard, into that backyard, and you know, whatever. So the police are very, very responsive and helpful, and there were squatters in the one building. Now I didn't catch on that, but I saw when they came and got them out, but I wasn't called. We have a 6-foot fence, and so if I won't really see anything over there if I'm from down the first floor. So I missed a lot of things going on, but obviously other people saw them. So you know, our concern naturally, the house on the left of us, we have that little grassy lot that also belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Fish, and I think is kept in some kind of estate thing or something. And then the other side was our neighbor, and her house is just beautiful. It's 3 floors, and we were good friends with them before they sold about 2 years ago. So I was always a little concerned, you know, that there would still be some homes on West Main that were resident owned and dwelt in, or I guess owner indwelling. And so I was a little concerned that it could be bought and then just really divvied up in the wrong kind of way, in a way that would not help our property values, because I'm right next door. So I went and talked to Mr. Kyle today. Actually, his company's been doing our electric since we moved in there. Just the updates and whatnot. And so when he told me his plan, I was so relieved, because I really had a plan to just go kind of big and please don't cut down all the trees, because I thought that's what's going to happen. Everything just get raised and all flat top, and it would just look very industrial, not residential. And so that was really my plan. But when he said what he was doing, he was going to restore everything, I was just so happy, thrilled. So it's the best situation I think we could expect, because the house was so run down. I don't know that you would get a family unless they really had a lot of money to put into it to even restore it to that. So I think this is the very best we could do for. Because it's going to take so much money to put in. It requires somebody who's sort of an investor, but also it has a heart to keep it in a historical sense that kind of helps the you know, helps certainly the other single family homes that are historical homes. And I just think it's going to be great. It's going to keep crime out, certainly. So I'm all in favor of it.
You heavily invested in the neighborhood, correct?
Yeah.
So you live there and your business is
Yeah,
there.
my business is there. I own 130 and 131, I own 133, 151 to my business. I own 153, 153 and a half, 155, 157 and 164, which is across the street. And so that's when this property came. Yes, I'm very happy. And 131 and 133 was a complete devastation when I bought it. And I fixed that back, and that's two nice units there, some really nice people. I like to get people, when we do these things, and we have numerous rentals all over. And like Lindy, when we fix these up, first of all, I like to fix them up so that I don't have any problems. So I'll put the new electric, new plumbing in. But I like to make sure that I would live there myself. And this house there, I got a heart for it. I missed one up on East Main Street that got tore down. And I wanted that. But but that's why I wanted to restore that one and get that one back up.
The
But
log structure, yeah.
but anyhow, but this one here, it's got beautiful wood floors in it. When someone walks in, you're gonna go into the foyer area, the original foyer area. They'll walk upstairs and up into their apartment, and the downstairs apartment will come in off the side, there's a big porch, wrap around porch. It's gonna be a really nice unit.
Did you
In the
just
back.
buy it?
Huh?
Did you just buy it?
Yeah. But I think it fits in with the community, and like it says, financial viability anymore. You almost have to make it so it turns into a mortar unit because you can't afford to fix it up, especially at the condition it is now. And all, so.
Yeah, 1,200 square feet for both units, that's a pretty good size.
That's mine.
Just curious on the 3 people, is that a normal for a 2-bedroom to require 3?
Well, it's usually not gonna be more than that. Because if it's a husband and a wife, they may have one child. And it just, in my opinion, that's usually about how many you get. You need, that's.
Questions here for the applicant witnesses, and we need a staff report. I assume council that the staff report, they refer to specific exhibits on the first page, that we should enter them per that report 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So I could do a motion to accept the exhibits.
Yeah, so move. Motion to accept the exhibits.
I second.
All in favor?
Well,
There we go.
okay,
Well, we on.
So I just wanted to go over a couple of points. So obviously it is for a conversion dwelling, which is then subject to section 16450 of the code. Again, all the notices were done in accordance with section 1641616, including newspaper advertisement, certified mail to adjacent properties, and a sign posted at the property, which we have then been provided with evidence by Mr. Kyle showing that sign. So going on to conversion dwelling criteria. The first being that there will be off-street parking in accordance with the parking standard for multiple family units as provided in section 164 of 111C. And as stated in the pre-hearing statement, it would require 4 spaces for the 2 dwellings. However, a simplified site plan would also need to be provided by the applicant, stating that they're meeting those parking regulations. Section B is the maximum number of dwelling units permitted in any conversion dwelling. In the B, DB or CB zone shall be determined by dividing the area in square feet of the lot upon which the proposed conversion dwelling is located by 3,500. It does therefore meet this requirement. According to the estate, property is 10,072 square feet in area, which would allow for 1 conversion dwelling for a maximum of 2 dwelling units, which Mr. Kyle has already stated. Third point is the structure sought to be converted is not enlarged or expanded more than 30% of the floor area of the dwelling existing prior to the conversion. It doesn't appear that that's the case, but if the applicant, Mr. Kyle, could further explain that if he is intending to enlarge property. And the fourth that each proposed dwelling unit shall meet the minimum square foot requirements of the minimum livability code as contained in Carroll County Ordinance 70. And this will be reviewed at the time of building permit review. Again, we then go through the special exception criteria under 164, 169. The first point in making its determination, the board may consider whether the appeal or petition would adversely affect the public health, safety, security, morals, or general welfare, would result in dangerous traffic conditions, or would jeopardize the lives or property of people living in the neighborhood. These haven't been particularly stated in the pre-hearing statement. However, through conversations had prior to this in testimony, it would appear that that has been addressed in terms of the renewal of the property. However, any further clarification is welcome. In deciding such matters, the board may consider the following factors together with other relevant factors: the number of people residing or working in the immediate area concerned, of which you've already stated that it would be 2-bedroom units with no more than 3 people. The orderly growth community, traffic conditions. Again, this would need to be addressed with parking. And again, the comment regarding the facilities of the sewers and waters would require a water and sewer application. Then we move on to the conditions for granting of special exceptions pursuant to section 164, 161A, which is to hear and decide special exceptions as such exceptions are authorized by this chapter. And then 164, 170A, which may grant a special exception when it finds from a preponderance of the evidence of record that. And then it's the proposed use does not adversely affect the general plan. It is stated within the comprehensive plan that to promote infill development, which this would be infill development, as would create 2 family units from the one. The proposed use of the selected location will not adversely affect the health and safety of residents or workers in the area. Staff recommend the applicant clarify any work that may impact residents or workers in the area during construction. Again, the overburden on public services would be addressed through a water and sewer application. And C, be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or the general neighborhood. The additional vehicle trips would be nominal and not adversely affect downtown Westminster. And it would appear from testimony provided tonight from neighbouring properties that this would be a beneficial to the street. The third is that the standards set forth for each particular use for which a special exception may be granted have been met. The outstanding issues would be through the sewer and water allocation application, the parking spaces through a simplified site plan, and any building permits required. In addition, to address possible impacts of proposed conversion, staff recommends that 2 dwelling units be 2-bedroom units with no more than 3 people, as stated by the applicant. That's staff's recommendation.
Before the staff report, I guess it's officially put into the record, or the copy that goes into the record, the map needs to be changed. It's not representing the property in question. It's on page 3, so that change needs to be made.
Also, if we're also talking about a change to the record, if this is going to be 2 apartments, just saying that The number of water for the allocation per day was 235 if they were a duplex, thinking that they, at the original time, there would be 2 duplexes. They're 2 apartments, that number goes down. So we'll update with the appropriate number for the water and sewer allocation application, but just wanna clarify that as well.
And if applicant, you know, you have to file with water and sewer.
Yeah, I've already, yeah.
I think, just want to put it on there. Any questions from the applicant to the staff? Any questions from the staff to the applicant? If that's the case, I'll close the testimony of the this hearing and have comments and discussion with you.
See a downside.
And I'll do the positive.
Less creatures probably running around.
Is there fire damage in that building or is it just pitch and stuff
On the one on the carriage house, that was fire damage from 164 when the barn burned down there. That was years ago. And there was a Harley Davidson, they used to work on Harley Davidson. It's still burned on the side of the carriage house.
It took you so long to buy it.
Council, if we submit a motion for approval, do you see that we make any conditions to it from a legal standpoint? I mean, other than a request for an application of the water and sewer allocation.
Appropriate building permit.
Yeah. Okay, but they're already taken care of, so.
So that would depend on the board's conclusions with respect to all of the findings that you need to make. If
Okay.
you find that the application in any way doesn't comply with any of those, then you could impose a condition to ensure compliance with it.
Thank you.
So it's hard for me to answer that question.
Well, you gave me enough information. Some further discussion here, in my opinion, both by testimony and by an attachment to the statement of the application, I think the applicant has provided the board enough information in terms of the criteria for determination and conditions for special exception. And I would make a motion to approve special exception. If the board feels that we should have a condition that they apply for the water and sewer allocation. Seems like in process at this point.
I think we make water and sewer, appropriate building permits, appropriate parking, as well as keeping it to 2 units.
For a second. Third. On favor, say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for doing it too.
Yeah, it's good. Westminster needs more revivals.
Is there anything left vacant on me? Is there many up on the West Main side?
Right across the street from us. What is that? It's no doctor. Dr. Memorial's house. That's just.
Any other business?
Oh, of course. Is there any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
New rules here are just going to be arguing down.
Oh,